Here we go. All right, Case Myers, here we go. Uno, dos, tres. Welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending September 6th, 2020. It's Labor Day weekend, and this is episode 377 of Control Talk Now, where we talk about smart building controls, HVAC controls, cybersecurity, the current state of affairs from time to time, and whatever else. Your co-host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the grandfather, Kenny Smyers wants to talk about. Kenny, welcome to the show. Big dog.
Thank you very much, Eric. And grandfather is right. I'm a grandfather. My wife and I have 2 grandchildren already, and our daughter Stephanie is ready to get to have our 3rd one in February. So we're real excited, and it's been a blessing. And it's just a marvelous experience, and tickled.
So a little boy, you went and saw him last weekend. Young Kenneth Eric Smyers, right? Is that his name?
Those are his middle names. His name's actually. Let's see here. Sebastian Thomas O'Mahony. But,
so we're going to have to count on your other daughter and her son.
Sebastian Thomas right. Ken Eric O'Mahony.
There you go. There, Kenneth Eric. Yeah. Well, nice. And how was California?
Oh, it's gorgeous. You know, it's they're also going through their COVID. Can't do this. Some of it doesn't make any sense. Like in Pennsylvania, we're no better. You can take your mask off to eat and drink. But. Whatever they're doing, I think it's working. I hope it's working. I hope our shelter in place was very important, so we stopped the spread. Now the masks, I think, are very important. And I'll tell you what, applaud those people. They were very, very fastidious. Everybody was wearing a mask. The airports are desolate.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the flying. Were they taking a lot of precautions at the airport and on the plane?
Well, yeah, I mean, everything from the, going through security, everything, they put the spacing on the floor. It's very spelled out. A lot of thermal checking, a lot of questioning. Get on the plane. I flew Southwest. It had spacing. Couldn't sit 2 people together unless they were family.
Oh, wow. I would love to fly because you don't have to worry about some big overweight guy sitting in the middle seat next to you or something.
That's correct.
That, right?
That's correct. So then,
man.
And then
all right, I got to start flying again, brother.
It was like they got like a little sign up that says there's 3 places open in the whole airport. So I mean, it's like a movie scene where Dawn of the Dead or something, because there's nobody there yet everything's lit up and functioning. You can hear footsteps from half a mile away. It's crazy. It's just as spooky as it can be.
Well, very, very, very cool. And Kenny Smyers, who is our sponsor of this week's show?
Our sponsor of this week's show is Stromquist Company out of Atlanta.
Well, we are platinum sponsors. I'd be lying if I said we didn't get a little bit of a deal on that. But what do you say we do a co-sponsor with Stromquist Company and Jackson Controls? Because Jackson, the home of the one and only Roger Rebanak, is also a platinum sponsor. So it's a distributor sponsor week, and we probably ought to throw in. I think those are only 2 big platinum sponsors, me and you. So
that's correct.
Well, cool. Well, listen. Cybersecurity has not gone away. As a matter of fact, I think shelter in place has given the hackers more time to work on their craft. And, that cybersecurity thing is a moving target. We got 2 great guests that are coming back to give us an update on that. So let's cut right to the chase, Kenny, and get to those guys. How about introducing them?
Indeed, Eric.
Let's get going.
I'd love to. In fact, this is an extension of Control Talk Now 373, where we had 2 of the top dogs in the cybersecurity business, Intelligent Buildings cybersecurity experts Fred Gordy, Director of Cybersecurity, and Michael Magee, Director of Managed Services, are going to continuously update us and inform us on what's going on in the cybersecurity world. Welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
Yep, good to be here.
Glad to have you guys here. And listen, for somebody who might have missed that first interview, which you definitely need to go back and do that thing in the entirety, because it was just so full of very useful information and trends and everything else that's upon us right now. You guys mind to give them just a couple of the highlights so that we can pick up from there and go on?
Sure. The one thing that I really wanted to talk about that was overarching of that last talk was becoming trusted partners with your owners. So we've got vendors, we've got integrators coming into the building And we really want to make sure that they're a trusted partner, that they've got the owner's interest in mind as well as their own for their own business. But it's being transparent, it's being honest, and it's being upfront with everybody. And I think today we're going to expand on that a little bit when we talk about a system ownership. And we also want to get into some of the contractual means to convey that responsibility and create transparency between you, the integrator, and the building owner, so everybody understands what each other is doing.
And
Well, go ahead, Fred.
Just to quickly add to that too, is one of the things, Mike and I, we talk daily, and one of the things that we want to make sure that we get out of today is, I know that a lot of people that listen are integrators and the people that are installing these things. And what we want to do is we want to be able to enable you to set yourself apart and also embrace the new direction that the industry's taken, and that is a more cyber secure environment.
No, absolutely. That's what I was going to hit on. And this is a moving target. So it's like, even what we said last time, I mean, things in cybersecurity are changing so rapidly. And if you can be an integrator or even a consulting engineer or an advisor to the owners, you're going to really be able to set yourself apart. But you got to know what you're talking about. And it's not just know what you were talking about 2 months ago. It's knowing how to talk about it right now. Fair statement, guys? Is the target moving that rapidly?
Yes. Yep. Especially when you have buildings that are taking a year from contract to completion, things are going to change in that process. So the contract that you sign, there may be different cybersecurity requirements by the time you're done with that building. And there's got to be communication along that entire way. The other thing I wanted to say, just to react to you, hopefully this will give some information to some of the smaller integrators that are a little bit more nimble and a little bit faster to change and create new business plans. Because we're seeing where the big BAS provider building automation companies are lagging behind in this. So this is a perfect opportunity for somebody to really differentiate themselves from the rest of the market if they've got the speed and the willingness to really create a new product.
Well, Michael, you said offline earlier that this process begins earlier than most people really understand. This process has to begin right around installation of the building automation or the systems that are going into the building, because it transitions from installation to service and then eventually to IT and then acceptance by the owner. What is the good point to get started with the?
Well, and that's the point that most of your audience is seeing, is when when the columns are up and the floors are poured. Now that's when the integrators are coming in. There's a year and a half before that where there's design engineers who are laying out the products, creating the design documents, creating the specs that are driving the bid process before that integrator even steps foot on the building. And what we need to do is really capture a lot of these requirements back at the design part, so it can pull through that entire process and not only end at the end of construction, but reside in the owner's wheelhouse once they get going and operating the building. So there's an important education component for your design engineers, because they're specifying these systems as a functional spec most of the time. And there are new, relatively new tools like a Division 25, and there's some cybersecurity things in Division 27, but most people don't know enough to start to include it in there. So how do we convey those cybersecurity policies, and then how do we keep them current during the construction process is one of the hard things that we're facing right now.
Well, yeah, and I think it's what you guys get paid the big bucks for. I can imagine some of those conversations when you go in and the building was, they've been doing the construction for the last 2.5 years, and all of a sudden you guys are coming and going, well, this isn't up to spec and this isn't going to work, and there are holes here and there are gaps here. Right. I mean, so that, but it's a reality that we all have to face and deal with, right? I mean, we can't ignore it.
Right. And when you look at a new world with tenant-facing software, because owners want to add these software amenities, whether it's transit tracking or even occupancy-based HVAC, all that has to be baked into some level into those specs. And the implementation of those really happen after the construction is turned over to the owner. So we need to make sure that thought's there. Sorry, go ahead, Fred.
No, my apologies. Eric, you said something that really strikes a chord with us because we've been involved in those situations. In fact, we were involved in one. It was a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar implementation or construction of a building. And early on, when they started, this was 4 years ago, and so people really this wasn't on their radar. But as it began to get near the end of the project, and when I say end, we're talking about the last 18 months, we were brought in to basically do cyber commissioning on the building. And that's the way it worked out in this situation, but it shouldn't work out that way. And the reason I say that is because now you have vendors who have already submitted bids. This is what they're going to do, and they've been signed off on. Well, then if you involve the cyber at the end, we know a lot of the things that they need to do were not done. So really the only approach we can do is to go in and see where they are, where they're going to be, this is what it's going to look like when they hand the keys over, so to speak, and give them a standing of where they are now, and then a 1 to 2 to 5 year plan to then get cyber secure. So to Mike's point, the sooner you get that involved in the process, it's not that much more cost, if at all, because it's just part of the design process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What it sounds a little bit like is, like a medical doctor, you guys are doctors that have discovered that donuts are going to cause heart disease, right? And you go in and everybody goes, well, we've already bought all the donuts, and you guys are having to tell them, yeah, but you're going to get a heart attack if you keep eating those damn donuts. You got to change it up. And Fred, it's kind of reassuring to hear that it's not really that much more of a cost, okay? Especially if you look at it compared to the risk of not plugging those holes, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
They're doing the work anyway. They're setting up passwords. They're setting up protocols. They're setting up communication ports. They're setting up the network itself with certain switches. Going the extra step to create individual passwords for every user really shouldn't be a cost to begin with.
No.
But if it is, it's very minor. The only real significant cost that I could see with Fred's comment is maybe you're going to a managed switch instead of a Best Buy kind of Netgear purchase. And we can even talk about that at some point about the building providing the actual backbone and having a managed backbone for that. But if they don't, there's no reason to go and get poor quality or residential, or lesser quality switches or gear to put in these networks to cut your bid down. Because anybody who is aware of the cybersecurity risk is going to go in and see that. And, now you're just adding cost to the back end and ruining your relationship with the owner, essentially.
Right. Well, and it seems like, too, that, just the process of the way construction is done and the specifications are laid out doesn't necessarily lend itself, at least at this point in time, to really getting all that coordinated up front. How would you guys change it? In other words, if you could just sort of change the whole process today about this is what the engineers are going to specify, this is how they're going to specify it, or how would you guys shift the way it's done? Right.
And you're asking us to postulate how to change a multi-billion-dollar industry. So I'm not even going to go there.
Oh, come on.
But what I'm going to say is these integrators, especially the smaller shops, what you can do is potentially develop your own cybersecurity policy, some basic things like this is how we operate. We have individual passwords for every user. We're going to set up on off ports. We're going to include a layer of management in our switches in our network and submit that with your bid. So at least you're drawing a baseline. Then during the construction process, prompt a meeting with IT to understand what they're going to expect of you and start that conversation. And we're not seeing that done today at all. But I think if you're doing those two things alone, you're going to differentiate your services from the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, so get back to Fred's original point, and one of the promises of this interview is a way to be different,
right,
and better than your competition.
Yeah.
You guys had the term that it's ringing in my ears still, that cyber commission, the cyber commissioning. Of course, Division 27 being the master specification or the communications division. Is this a new standard coming out where we're just like we have commissioning agents for buildings before they're turned over to the owner? We got a commissioning agent comes in and they sit down and they go line by line through this regimented process to ensure that the exact specifications met. I mean, we're going to see potentially cyber commissioning coming in into the spec, and that in order for the building to get the top rating, it has to have a cyber commissioning.
Fred, why don't you start that off and I'll finish up.
Yeah, that'd be so. And I smile because it's, well, maybe we can talk about it, or we may have to talk about it at another time, talking about ratings. So absolutely. I mean, we are working and have been working very hard with setting up standards because, as you guys have heard from me time and time again, IT standards are not an exact fit by no means, and neither is ICS, which is our distant cousin. So there are some unique situations or things that you have to take into account when you're going in to check a building out. And like you said, Ken, you know my background, where I came from is, you would have your systems commissioned, and there would be a commissioning agent that would come in. I mean, the company I used to work for, we had those commissioning agents, but the customers that we did work for would always like a third party, right? So same thing in this is, to go back to some things that Mike was talking about, speccing things out at the beginning, is this is an opportunity for a vendor to begin a process of setting up their own standards, and then someone like us coming in behind them to check against to see if they're meeting at least best practices.
It sounds like a great opportunity.
It is, and this can be something that isn't complex or burdensome. Most vendors have some sort of checkout that they go through. Are the wires wire tied? Is it neat and clean in the cabinet? Is there power? We checked out it's 120 volt, those types of things. This could be a cybersecurity checklist at the bare minimum. Everybody's got their own password and credentials. We've got this is how we remote in, and it's passing that off to the owner saying that we've done what we said we were going to do and we've checked it out. So there's a level of comfort, again, developing that trusted partner that we talked to earlier, that that the vendor has the owner's interest in mind, to at least to a certain level, and they're not left holding wonder or a misunderstanding of what's already been done. And the owner may have higher requirements and you've got to adjust to that, but if you're just doing the basic best practices, that's going to get you further than most of the industry that we're seeing today. I would also add that we're seeing another type of commissioning, smart building commissioning, when we're looking at integration systems and functionality of the interface itself. So that's a little bit beyond what the base building commissioning would be doing. And then Fred and I have also worked with third parties that go in and check physical access kind of commissioning. Can they break into the building? Can they get past certain security guards? So whatever your risk tolerance is, there's a lot of new industries that are popping up out there that can help you understand the position of your building. And if it's a new construction, were the specs taken into account, because some of this can be a performance level spec.
When it seems like helping people understand, it seems like you guys, Intelligent Buildings, really work with a myriad of customer sets, including an integrator. If an integrator wanted to understand, how they could expand their business and add this into, you guys are available for them. I'm sure you guys are available for consulting engineers if they want to get up to speed. And I think your sweet spot is the owners, right? So right. You guys sort of interface on multiple levels with, among other things, the mission being getting everybody on the same page and tightening this thing down. Is that a fair statement?
Right. We're really advocates for the owners. That's our sweet spot in our business. Going into the construction, after construction, helping negotiate with vendors, we're really the advocate from the owner. We have worked with specific vendors to better their position. At times, we've got a couple engagements in the past and some current ones saying, how can I differentiate myself in the market? We've even gone into a little bit of branding and not necessarily logos, things like that, but what information do they need to pull out of their normal business opportunities and project out to create that next level for owners to look at them and say, this is really the type of trusted partner that I want to have in the building. And then, we've talked about this on last time and offline too. Totem Trusted Partners helps. Totem Buildings platform is a great place to start registering and baselining your practices. There are other mechanisms out there that can do that as well, and simply creating that checklist. Here's what we've done our research. Here's our basic cybersecurity practices. Here's what we're going to do on every project moving forward.
That's good stuff, Michael. You mentioned too a couple of things about planning for end of life and end of line,
Right.
and how. Tell us a little bit more about that. What the consequences could be if you don't have a program in effect that safeguards your best long-term interests.
Right. So I'm going to open this up a little bit more and talk about transparency in general and ownership of the system. We're finding as we're going through the portfolios that we're auditing, we're seeing a number of different scenarios where no one knows who, or no one understands who owns what part of the system. So there's a server or a PC sitting on the building engineer's desk. You talk to the building engineer and you say, well, there's Windows updates that need to happen. He says that he doesn't want to do it without the vendor. The vendor, on the other hand, when we talk to them, saying, oh, well, we supplied that box underneath the contract, but that is the owner's responsibility to update. So there's this gray area that no one wants to make a move without fear of the other, and neither one of them wants to take responsibility. So from a general system operation, being very transparent about what the vendor is going to require from the owner and what the owner is expecting the vendor to take care of is very important. That leads into the end of life. And doing system inventories and having that on hand and projecting out an end of life is going to be of value to a customer. I'm going to refer back to Fred in just a second, but part of cybersecurity's best practices are having an updated inventory of all your devices. So right there, an integrator can run that out of the BAS, run that out of their logs, and provide a list of devices that are on the network and in the building. From there, you can go work with the manufacturers to find out an end of life, and then sit down and have an annual review with the customers and say, here's what's in your building, here's the end of life. Let's develop a plan, because this software or this firmware is expiring in 2 years. When that expires, it's going to be no longer supported, and the hardware that it's riding on is going to be discontinued. And if that board fails, we're going to have to replace these 5 other boards, because the new replacement won't be able to integrate to the other systems. And what that eventually allows them to do is budget out for it, because we've all seen the scenario where that board breaks, it crashes, you've got to replace it. Now we're replacing 5 to 6 other boards at a 6-figure cost, and no building has that in the disposable budget. So you're discounting your relationship with the owner, because you're doing a lot of break fix work on an emergency basis, instead of being upfront and transparent. Here's what you have, here's the end of life, here's our recommendations, let's start budgeting this out. So we're doing the work over 2 to 3 years that you can budget for, rather than on a Saturday night at triple time, because you've got to have the building back up and running on Monday. And Fred, if you don't mind talking a little bit about the standards that talk through the inventory of devices.
Right. So let's just to take a pause for just a minute to move into that. Is one of the things to kind of go back to something we were talking about earlier about being the value add to the customer. I'm going to look back at my roots when I was working as an integrator. Is we would typically get a set of mechanicals, we get the sequences of operation, we get riser diagrams, whatever. But the one thing that we didn't get was everything beyond what is the manufacturer we're going to install. Okay, so like if it's a Honeywell device, that was pretty much it. We were told, okay, we're putting Honeywell in. Well, from there, we just did whatever we wanted to do to set the system up. Now, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but what it is okay, well, this is how we do things, and so we go in and install it. But stop and think for just a minute with this new world that we're in. Is what if you handed back to the customer what I call the fourth document. And the fourth document is a thing that we call control profiles. And what that does is it speaks to things like end of life. If we know that a device is its expected end of life is in 2028, we want to include that to the owner. We also want to include how we configure the username and passwords, what ports they're on, what, on and on and on. So there's a twofold, or several actually, things that you can allow you to plan for. One being is, in the unlikely event, me as an integrator were to get fired from servicing the system, there's every way that we set it up so that the owner now is not in a situation they have to hand it to another vendor and the vendor figure it out. So that cuts down on time. The other thing, too, is when you have that information about end of life and support and vulnerabilities from day one, then you can you can begin to budget for what that may look like in 5 to 6 to 7 years. Okay, there are situations where that end of life is not available at that time. Well, that means that, yes, you'll have to keep this control profile up as an owner. So if your vendor lets you know, hey, the end of life is coming up in this year, then you update your profiles. And a profile, it's not a huge lift. Like if you have a single system with a single type of controller or supervisory controller and a single front end, you only have to update 2 things. Now, but to more specifically around Mike's point, is one of the first things that NIST tells you to do is identify. So by setting up an asset management tool or some process, if you will, you also have now every bit of information that you need to understand, like, what are the dependencies of the device? If I were to lose this device, what else does it affect? It's not just about counting the number of devices that are in your building. It's about all the things that go along with them. So, I don't know if that's what you were shooting at, Mike.
No, it was, and actually more, because I like how that is not only providing value from the inventory end of life update, but you're also getting into your disaster recovery plan.
Exactly.
Because you know what exactly needs to be done, and then you can also identify the known errors of it. And to expand on one thing that you said, I personally feel as we come across some of the larger integrators that they're using the ambiguity of the system to almost bully into keeping the customers with them.
Right.
Because if there's a proprietary system in there or the customer doesn't understand what's in the system, it's very easy to go, good luck leaving me. You don't even know where the panels are in the building. How are you going to find somebody else to service this? So you're bullying your customers into staying with you on service contracts. And I feel as we move to a more IT-centric version of these control systems, that old school mentality isn't going to fly for long. And you're going to get people, and we've come across a couple who are like, if they're not playing nice, we'll rip them out and we'll replace them with a new system. I don't care if it's $500,000. I don't want that person in my building. So that's the mentality that we're seeing out there now, and it's growing and growing. And I think the business model that we've been seeing with integrators and a lot of the control vendors is really going to have to change to keep up with that.
Wow, that's pretty serious. First of all, I want to go back to that fourth document right away, Fred. Again, this terminology, I love the bells and whistles stuff. I love hearing new industry jargon. So the fourth document, I think that's the first time I've heard that. Is that something that is something I missed in these 30-some years, or is that something you came up with that is a really cool idea?
To be 100% transparent, it's a derivative of something that I came across in the IT world. Is they have, if you think of it this way, like IT has a thing called an image, right? So if you're working for a company and you have a PC or a laptop or whatever, they have a operating system image, and it may include certain things like Office, whatever other things, so that when they can just grab your laptop, plug it in, and then it re-images the machine and you're back to working, right? So there's some other things too around that. But the bottom line is it's something through our experience that we have developed that aids the owner and empowers the owner, but it also empowers the integrator as well. And so To give you another example of something that a control profile can do is I have people hit me often that say, hey, we have this new tool that we can discover everything on the network. Okay, that sounds great, and that's good. I'm not disparaging that. But what we see time and time again is the software will go out and it'll discover every IT asset that's out there, and then it'll start discovering these assets and it has no idea what they are. Now they'll try to match up the MAC address to the manufacturer, but that still doesn't tell you everything you need to know about that device. So another aspect of the control profile is you can now enable those scanning tools that IT may be using by handing them a derivative of it called a device profile. It's like, let's take Niagara, for example. If you scan a network, I've seen Jaces come up as iOS devices, believe it or not. Okay, so IT is going to think they have a bunch of iPhones out there. But the other pieces of it is they see that there's a port 1911 open, or a port 3011, or port 4911. Those are all ports that are specific to Niagara, right? Well, that device profile now enables those scanning tools. They can plug that information in, then rerun the scan there, and identify these things correctly as that's a Jace. Or if a new device is plugged in down the road and they have these, you don't have to worry about trying to figure out what that is if it comes up on scan. So you need to be able to have pieces of that to enable different aspects of your business.
Mm-hmm. And as we're seeing more and more people request scans to find out all the IP addressable systems on their network, due to compliance regulations, I know the fiduciary industry is really pushing hard for this now, and we're getting it from a couple other clients. That's becoming more and more prevalent. And we're in a paradox with one of the customers we're working with now, because they've got a lot of IoT devices. And due to the nature of the way that data is transported and the fact that everybody under the sun is making some sort of wireless device, putting those pieces together is becoming harder and harder. Some of that's because it's not published. Some of it is because they didn't get it when they originally bought the device. But bringing that together to identify what those devices are is forcing people to pop ceiling tiles and things like that. And what we want to do is try to get away from that by maintaining an inventory and also getting enough information so if something doesn't come through with a full MAC address or isn't be able to tie back to a specific vendor, that we've got the forensics to understand what that device is.
Very interesting. Because I think it's mapping itself out pretty clearly how, number one, you got to get started early. You got to be part of the planning. Number two is how it's a journey. It's not solved in any 6-month period of time. It's an updated constantly, and you need somebody to be the champion, the internal champion, or an outside champion to manage it. Because for some of these, when you're talking about the asset management tool, I mean, even when we use that when it's applied to Niagara, and the asset manager is on there, it's still, it makes sense. It's easy to understand, but difficult to implement and keep track of. And then use it for all your information regarding what versions you're at, when your software maintenance agreements end. So you're going to take this to the next level. You're going to take this with the entire, everything inside the building or enterprise, and make it transparent, identify it, and then document it from that point forward. See, because then what I was trying to get is, then you make a business case of how you can manage the customer's assets so that you can anticipate where their next pain point is going to be, or where their next issues are likely to arise, because you're maintaining industry awareness, and you talk about Microsoft, Windows, and all these other things that ultimately become troublesome, very troublesome.
Right, and it goes back to that trusted partner. Do I have the building owner's interest in mind? Or am I just doing break fix?
Michael, you said trusted partner, and I love the word, but tell us how many trusted partners there might be in a building, in a customer's portfolio. How many trusted partners do they have?
Any system that's on the IT network or OT network really needs to become a trusted partner. And IT has their own way of verifying this. The OT world, obviously, we all know is a little bit behind IT. So, it could be your BAS vendor. It could be the individual techs in that vendor as well, which is one thing that Totem is trying to look at as well. Do the techs adhere to the cybersecurity policies that are specified by the customer? and that the actual branch is looking at following. So you could have 3 to 4 of those for each system that's in your building. So now we're talking about a stable of about 20 different people probably.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah, but real quick, I think a lot of people out there, getting back to Fred's original statement about this is a great opportunity to differentiate your business. What I'm hearing now is, hey, if you want to do that, you have to be a trusted partner. So how do I demonstrate that I'm a trusted partner? Is that primarily vis-a-vis, even if I'm an OT vendor, vis-a-vis how I play with the IT and the cybersecurity, or are there other ways for me to demonstrate that I'm a trusted partner?
Well, it's a lot of it really, when it comes down to it, is somehow documenting the best practices and documenting what you believe as a business. If we look at contractors, we look at other people that provide services, there's everything from the Better Business Bureau to certifications to different types of ratings that you can get out there. For my home, you can go to Angie's List, you can go to Home Advisor, things like that, and find out what their rating is based off of other people's reviews and based off of information that they presented. So, if I'm a smaller integrator, just documenting my practices now is going to lead me down that path to become that trusted vendor. And it's not really a certificate that you get or anything, but it's your relationship with the customer and how they feel about them. I mean, how many times have you gone in the building and talked to somebody and go, oh man, I got to call my BS vendor again. I hate doing that because he's got an attitude. He shows up, he doesn't do the work right. I'm ending up cleaning up all his tools and all the wire clippings when he leaves. We're doing the same thing in the cybersecurity world. Because I can't, I'm sorry, go ahead, Fred.
Just real quick, because this is something we've talked about internally, but I really believe in the near future, I hope, is, if I can use an analogy, when you show up to a place to get your car fixed, and I cannot think of the certification right now, but you can see that these mechanics have certain certifications, right? Well, that's where we're headed, is if you have a vendor that has that, trusted partner certification or whatever the case may be, isn't that going to drive you more to work with them than somebody that we don't know what they know?
Yeah, and Fred, I even go to a step simpler. When you go to the mechanic, you look at the floor. Is there oil? Is there tools all over the place? When I go audit a building or do a site visit for a building, one of the things I want to look at is the chiller room. Are there boxes everywhere? Is the floor epoxied and clean? Is there oily rags sitting around? Things like that. That's a simple view of how that building engineer or that mechanic is keeping their shop. And if I know that that's not clean, I know that my job is going to be harder or easier, depending on how you look at it, because I'm going to find a number of things wrong as we walk through the building. We're asking that of our vendors too.
Right. No, it makes sense. And I'm wondering, are there certifications that I could get? Does Intelligent Buildings, for example, have a certification that an integrator can go through? Or if you were an integrator and said, look, go get this certification, make sure you put the patch on your shirt, are there any that you would recommend?
Fred, I don't know of anyone out there right now. The Totem Trusted Partner is the first step in it.
Yep.
And other than that, I think it's getting your own housekeeping initiatives in order. The more documentation you have, the better you're going to present. And that's just a rule in life per se. If everything is documented and you can show it without a lot of fuss and a lot of going, oh, I got to go create that document, people are going to look at you, that you're organized and that you're willing to go that extra step.
And to that point, Ken, you like the term control profile. To that point, this is a good example. If you have vendors that are coming in to bid and they show you that, hey, when we do this, this is how we set everything up. We know what the vulnerabilities for this thing is. We know what the end of life is. We know all of these things. And I go, whoa, this guy's got his act together, right? So that's another
document. You want the fourth document. Present
the fourth document.
Hey guys, I'm taking a list here of all these new terms: cyber condition, fourth document, device profiles. I've heard that one before, but the reality is that I think the timeliness is also very apparent. That it's not going to go away. Clearly, the percentages of people being affected adversely by cybersecurity and incidents is occurring. It's just a matter of time that you can come willingly, take some leadership and come on board early and adopt it, so it's part of your program, part of your organizational culture. But if not, you're going to get the whipping stick is going to come out. The insurance companies are going to say, hey guys, you know what, you're not covered. And then you were talking about the cost of a panel. If a panel unfortunately, because of a rain water break or something, splashes onto the control panel, okay, great. You got to back up the program, you get new controllers, and you've got an expense, but it's covered by insurance, and you fix it, and you're on your way. The stuff that we're talking about with cybersecurity, you were mentioning some stuff that were pretty spooky. 6 figures is a starting point to get your platform back up and at them. So you've got to be able to make that a business case where pay me now or pay me a lot more later.
Yeah, and we didn't even get into this, I don't think, but just some hard stats. We just completed 2 building assessments or assessments of portfolios. One, I think, was 27 buildings and one was 32 buildings. Out of those 2 assessments, one had 57% of their buildings had a device exposed to the internet. The other one was 60. So we're not talking 1 or 2 devices. We're talking about over half of their portfolio had something exposed to the internet. So when we really get into the hardcore cybersecurity, this isn't housekeeping behind the firewall. This is actually looking at what's going out of the building. Over half of the buildings have the potential for a breach sitting there today. So what are you doing,
Michael, just to close that conversation loop right there. So you got half of your portfolios exposed to the internet, and then so what do the bad guys do now? So again, complete the equation. So you're exposed to the internet, and then what happens?
Well, there's different levels there, and I think it's important to kind of go through this. On a high level, it's just a device that's reporting that it's live on the wire. The middle line is going actually to the login screen. So you're logging directly, or the building automation, I want to be careful not to say name, but our building automation screen is right there with the user and password login. And then in one of the portfolios, we actually found a BBMD that was exposed on the net or accessible on the net, which allowed us to get into a much larger portfolio. So in the case of the BBMD, you can just send a backnet command through. In the case of the login screen, you can hammer it with a bot, just trying different username and passwords till you get in. The device that's on the web, you could use more sophisticated tools to get into that. And if nothing else, you could, and Fred, you'll have to tell me what the actual term is, but you can hammer that enough that it becomes occupied, that it can't do the work that it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I also want to throw something there to Mike's point. And I mean, you guys have known me long enough. I'm a pretty low key kind of guy, and I don't really I'm not one to get riled pretty hard. But when I first started this out, when we used to talk, I would tell you, hey, there's a lot of things exposed out there. At that point in time, all I could tell you was there's a lot of things exposed out there, right? I was getting new into this industry. I've been doing this now for about 6 years. And to Mike's point, when he's talking about finding things and the percentages and everything, what gets me riled up is when I'm talking to somebody who is in authority, who should know, and they just shut me down and they say, we don't have anything exposed. The thing that he cited, just the last one, that particular company, we got, and I got to give Mike all the credit. He took the hammering for our reports that we gave him. I was on the call and they were like, no, you're wrong. And then within Mike, a week, James found, I'll keep the number to us, but it was significant. The other was a conversation I had just recently, and I won't even say his title, but very high. And he said none of their systems were exposed, that we had this under control and everything. I got on Shodan, and in 5 minutes, I found one of their systems. And I will tell you this, it's a financial group. So the thing is we've got to drop this attitude that we don't have a problem. And I'm still amazed that we run into that today. It's just.
And it's it's even worse because most of the time the people that we talk to are IT people who don't know enough about the OT world or care enough about the OT world to investigate it. Their IT side may be buttoned up really nicely, but they, ignore, don't pay attention to or whatever to the OT world, and that's where we're finding these breaches.
And one other thing, sorry, even just talking about this subject gets me kind of fired up. Is the other day, to some Mike said spurred this, is when I hear that IT doesn't understand, is that's not really an excuse anymore. For example, the guy said, well, our OT side is totally separated. There is a segment. I mean, we're not even physically connected. And I said, and they said, well, there's no way that they can get in. Are you guys? I don't know if you saw the thing that I wrote about, but there's this ransomware called Snake. Snake is nasty. I'll tell you about it in a minute. But basically, you have guys that are sitting down there using their front ends for checking their email and checking Facebook, whatever. The networks are totally segmented. I get a bug when I'm in my control system, and it downloads to me, and then I connect that system or get on to send an email to somebody else in the corporation, right? That little bug's attached to it. Well, I got it because I wasn't using best practices in my control system environment. Now I just fed it into my corporate network. And what Snake does, it's not a ransomware like what we're used to, where it just locks your machine up. It crawls your network and locks everything up.
And Fred, I'll also add to that too. How many vendors come in with their laptop, pull it out of a backpack, and connect directly into your building automation network? It could not be connected to the internet, but I can guarantee you that laptop at some point was. And because we don't know what the techs do on their off hours, we don't know where that laptop has been. Now that's on your network, and things like the Snake viruses, other types of malware can easily propagate onto your air-gapped BAS network and wreak havoc.
Air-gapped doesn't mean safe.
Well, so are you telling me that like Facebook and places like that social media sites, are they doing anything on their end to prevent?
Not their responsibility.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
How many vendors are policing their techs' laptops? I mean, do they have software on the laptop to prevent them from going to certain sites? Most people that I know, here's your laptop, go to work. And that's it.
And guys, this, the industry that you guys are in, you deal with a lot of these integrators, right? Is particular software, application software that you do programming with, you have to have administrator rights on your laptop to even run it, right? Okay, so that's the other aspect of this. It's not where I'm logged in as some low-level user. I'm logged into my laptop with full privileges, which means that whatever I get into can get into anything that I have.
Jeez, that's scary, guys. That is scary.
There's a lot of hygiene that needs to be policed in our industry right now. And again, going back to that documentation, setting some ground rules for your shop and your vendors that come in and out of your shop are really important at this point, because developing a full cybersecurity, going through the credentialing, everything else is an expensive endeavor. Start with just the basic documents. Get some things under your belt now. Get your house in order, and then you can submit that with your bids. That's going to go further than 8 of the 10 other integrators that are out there right now.
Well, I every time you guys say something, I got to go look it up again. Another thing, cyber hygiene. Jesus,
yes,
that's a great.
That's another one.
Cyber hygiene, beautiful. That Snake ransomware. I never heard of it. Other than Fred mentioning it, but it nailed Honda.
Yeah.
So it went into the big car manufacturers, hurting them, giving the South American Energy Company a big hurt. I mean, so wow, if it can hit these guys, it can hit our customers.
Another one to look. Real quick, another one to look up, Ken, is nuclear ransomware.
Okay.
Something Fred that brought up the other day in a conversation that we were talking about something else is the lack of regulations requiring OT breaches to be reported. So as an industry, we're saying, oh, it's very rare that it can happen. And, although it's not as common as some of the other IT issues that are out there, we don't really know the extent of it because no one's reporting it. And if an industry does get hacked through their BAS or through their lighting system or whatever, odds are they're going to try to bury it before they admit it. So they're going to understand, how much damage is already caused by who knows now, and then encapsulate it the best they can, and then control the messaging if they do announce it later.
So cybersecurity has become a political issue.
Yeah, I mean, it always is because it's got brands attached to it.
Yeah.
You've got the control system brand and the owner's brand, both attached to that breach. So if you can modify the story so it's not as bad as what it probably is, you're going to do it. I mean, it's just human nature and business practices to go out there. But the bigger point of this is we don't really know how often this is happening because no one's reporting it.
Wow. Well, Kenny, anything else before we begin to wind down here?
No, I think one thing surfaces immediately is we need to see these guys again
soon.
And we need round 3 here. And the reason why is because I think, it's like serendipity, synchronicity, all these other terms where you meet it when you least expect it or something happens. But I think those days, I think we're all going to, hacking in our lives now is almost like people used to always say wireless was never going to work or whatever. And these are the people that are changing their channels with the wireless controllers and opening their garage doors with the wireless, so they don't realize that they've already made big, inroads of wireless as part of their lives. I think the same thing with cybersecurity and getting hacked. I mean, how many here have had one of their credit cards, fraudulent activity on credit cards where you've got, and so I'm just saying it's like it's already here, but we're not really fully acknowledging how vulnerable we are. I know I was scared enough to go get that, insurance for identity threat. I think it was Fred Gordy that made me do it because after I sat and talked to him for about an hour when we were doing this stuff, I was frightened. I was personally frightened because, and then I still look at all my stuff too. And I wonder just how well we can all do it. And when do we realize we've got to go to a third party expert and take them on as trusted partners?
Right.
You have to do it. Otherwise,
Kenny, well said, and that leads me to the final question of this interview. And I concur with Fred. I mean, with Kenny, we want to get you guys back in the next 3 to 4 weeks if you guys want to come back. But how do people engage you guys to become part of their trusted network team?
So start by coming to our website, intelligentbuildings.com, and our services are listed there. We do have a consulting arm as well, which is more advisory services, developing use cases, identifying what technology needs to be installed within the building. Fred and my focus is more the managed services, which is ongoing policy compliance to cybersecurity policies, vendor management, and then just establishing the baseline cybersecurity policies. And all of that's outlined on the website. And I think you're able to publish both of our email addresses. We're both on LinkedIn, and Fred is all over social media as well. If you just type in Fred Gordy, you'll see a ton of stuff come up. He does a number of different webinars as well. So we are both out there, and feel free to either contact us personally or through our company's website.
And I want to just throw one other thing in there. The leadership at Intelligent Buildings is, we all consider this more of a mission, our calling, if you will. And so the leadership at Intelligent Buildings has even made it a little bit easier, possibly, because I know a lot of this is we've thrown a lot of things out there, and people on the other side are sitting back going, well, okay, this is a whole lot. I don't know that I can even get started. Leadership has allowed us to make ourselves available. It's not a charge with it, but if you want to reach out to us with a few questions, whatever, we're more than happy to talk to you. Just if you got just to kind of help you get started. Like I say, I mean, it's not a cost. It's just we're making ourselves available.
No. I appreciate it, guys. And we'll definitely put those email addresses up. And, just kind of as a final thing, it's a little bit like, we're all a little bit older. It's kind of like you don't avoid going to the doctor and getting a checkup because you're afraid of what he might say. You go because if something's wrong, it's easier to nip it in the bud and get it fixed. And you guys, to me, are like the cybersecurity MDs. And, call and
Right.
schedule your appointment, get your screening done. And fellas, thanks so much, man. Have a great Labor Day, huh?
You too.
You too.
All right.
Thank
Fred,
you very
Michael,
much.
appreciate it. Fred
Sure.
Thank you.
Gordy,
Take care, guys.
Michael
Great
Magee
show.
from intelligentbuildings.com. All right, Ken Smyers, man, I'm hoping you are getting on Wikipedia and documenting all the great vocab words that our friend Fred Gordy is coming up with.
You have to admit, that's pretty cyber commissioning, which makes so much sense, but I had never heard it before. Cyber hygiene. How's your cyber hygiene, Mr. Stromquist? You have poor cyber hygiene or good?
I think that's a politically incorrect question to ask. I'm offended by that question.
The fourth document, that reminded me of the fifth column,
Or the fourth estate, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's another cool term that came out of an awareness of documentation and transparency. And you produce a document that lists every single device on your network. That would take some doing. And imagine if we have to, eventually abide by those, standards and provisions, it would certainly reduce our cybersecurity threats. But the important thing is that you got to have a mechanism to enforce it. And that's why, we started out Totem Trust. I know you all have.
We're doing Totem Trust too. Yeah.
And so, because you know what, it's bigger than anybody in an organization, unless you're a professional. And you heard what Michael said about IT guys. IT really don't know or really want to know about operational technology because they think, because they've isolated it, we're safe. But then again, Michael gives us an example where the guy comes to work, he has access to both, he can bring in bad stuff from a wrong place and put it into the mother network. And then, so even though they're isolated, even though the operational technology is isolated, the poor habits of the users and the inability to, make people aware of the simple thing of not opening strange emails or going to check sites on it, companies, on the front end is a mistake.
Well, I think he said something very telling, and I think it's not that you don't have really, really brilliant IT people out there, but it's you don't know what you don't know. And as Mike was saying, they understand the IT portion of cybersecurity, and they're pretty good locking that down. Where maybe there's a deficit for some of them is understanding the threat of OT devices and getting back to like the Totem, which we're proud to be representing that product too. I think it's a great process. It's the ability to sit down, get that document in place, have the process down so that you can track those things and you can know there's going to be a potential problem. But if you don't do that, it's just an unwieldy beast, right? You can't really track it down.
I learned something new again. That's what I'm saying. So great for us to have the opportunity to bring this information into the Control Trends community, and hopefully, everybody can derive the benefit from it. But imagine the IT guy doing his, getting all the devices on the network. He sees them and they're listed as iOS devices, thinking it's a phone, thinking it's an Apple. And then here it's a controller and it has open ports on it that this guy's getting ambushed because he did not know that device is being discovered incorrectly.
I know what our marketing guru over at Tritium's thinking, Therese Sullivan. She's got to be thinking we're going to call the next Jace the iJace, right? It's going to be identified as an OS.
Apple Jace. Apple Jace. There we go.
Apple Juice, Apple Jace. You got it. So, all right, brother. Well, what else is going on this week? What else?
Well, we got a post coming up. Let's see. We got Ken St. Clair, Automated Buildings, September editorial, right. Combining, collaborating. Wait, I'm sorry. Ken, you got me on the C words, man. This is talking about alliteration. Combining, collaborating communities, competencies. That's one term. Combining, collaborating communities, competencies. Huh?
C4.
C to the fourth power. Okay, so then we also got J2 Innovations. They're starting a new series called the J2 View. J2 View. J2's hired a new or has a marketing person, Jenny. We're going to be introducing ourselves with Jenny on Control Trends in the very near future. They've got some neat stuff that they're promoting out of J2. Probably a product that's going to be more towards the light commercial, medium-sized building markets. It's all about the putting technology to work. But the J2 View news, trends, and comments began end of August, and we'll have that posted so that the Control Trends community can take a look at that.
Yeah, well, special shout out to Scott Mensch and Jason Briggs, both from J2. We've known those boys for a while. They've done really well, so we're really proud of you guys. So keep up the good work. All right, Kenny Smyers, with that, man, it is Labor Day. I think a life raft is calling my name, and a cold beer is definitely calling yours, I can tell. So
I got that right.
again, special thanks to our guests, Michael Magee and Fred Gordy from Intelligent Buildings. And man, with that, be bold, stay in control, stay cyber secure, and have a great Labor Day weekend. We appreciate you tuning in.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers. That's a wrap. All right, man. Are we getting better, closer?
Boom, boom, there's a knock at the door, but don't freeze in your tracks. It's that chance that you've been waiting for. It's the light coming through the cracks.